Hey everybody, wanted to drop into class again here and give you a little bit of a frame for this chapter on Brazilian Candomblé in Murphy. I'm going to read a little bit out of the book as I go here. So I thought let's start out by thinking about the specific location of Bahia, and I'll say the phrase Salvador de Bahia. Salvador is the city and Bahia is the region. And so I think Murphy mostly uses Bahia because I've been to Salvador. I'm going to say Salvador de Bahia. It is the central city where the most of the terrejos or candomblé houses are. But when we think about this area, Murphy tells us in a footnote that they've calculated that probably something like 12.5% of all of the 10 to 11 million slaves that came out of Africa were processed through Salvador, through the port there at Bahia. And so when you think about Murphy's title, Working the Spirit, I want to think about what's the spirit of this place going to be? What in the world is going to happen at the city that will be haunted by the largest number of slaves having been moved through there for the longest amount of time in the Americas? So if we return back to Murphy's discussion of spirit on page 2, and I'm almost at page 2. There we are. I just want to recall this. He says, I'm interested in the way in which each tradition constructs and develops a code of relationships between human beings and spirit, however this word may be defined. These activities toward the spirit are the tradition's spirituality. Each tradition shows these relationships, enacts its spirituality in community activity, that is, in ceremony. So if we're headed to the place where the greatest number of slaves experienced being spit out on the land, having survived the Middle Passage, we can guess that this is going to have a uniquely powerful spirit, that its ceremony is going to be uniquely developed, right? There's going to be something different happening here. And then he goes on to say, at the bottom of page 2, by using the singular noun spirit, I only wish to indicate at this point that the participants' description of their own behavior is accurate. I do this a little bit in that encyclopedia entry on spirit. The idea that when we describe what a community is doing, we describe it as accurate. That what they say is happening. We are not arriving with our modern science to make real sense of it. We are describing what they are doing as accurate. That the spirit is a real and irreducible force uplifting communities throughout the African diaspora. So the spirit in Salvador is going to be a uniquely powerful, real and irreducible force uplifting the communities that arrived there. So who is it that was there? And this is going to be another interesting piece, and I can tell you George Brandon's book that I wrote that little intro lecture on about African roots of Yoruba traditions. He does a great job on what happens that makes Brazil, once you can't keep sending slaves to other places, Brazil has a unique business problem, which is we're the last place that will keep accepting slaves. We know the pipeline is getting shut down. We can see the future. So one of the things we got to do is keep our people as healthy as we can, because as long as we've got them over here and we can make them make babies, then we can keep our business going, right? They have a unique business problem. And one of the results, here's my nice map of Africa. The Benin, Togo, Ghana, Niger region, the Yoruba tradition, and as you see, for the Portuguese, they call this general area, identified it as Nego rather than Yoruba. But those terms are pretty much equivalent. All right, so that is the underside of the Horn of Africa is where we're talking about. Murphy says that on page 45 that these people are marked by their cultural homogeneity and hegemony. All right, bookmark those words. What do they mean? What's the cultural homogeneity? We probably know that term now in our days of cultural diversity and all of that. The homogeneous, Wyoming's one of the more homogeneous states left in the United States. We're a pretty white place. That creates a kind of cultural homogeneity. And hegemony. Hegemony is a very important word, and I'm going to actually do another little lecture on what hegemony means. Let me encourage you to look it up online, see what Wikipedia says about it. It's a term that describes a kind of power, but when you use the word hegemony, you are not suggesting that it is a block of power, but rather that some of the power actually comes out of the diffuse nature of power. So it's a kind of more modern way. Hegemony, whenever you hear that word, it's a more recent way of understanding how power requires both resistance, acceptance. It's got very many multiple layers, and people will walk different lines at even different points of the day in maintaining the dominant power. So well, we'll get into hegemony a little more, but I want to turn you on to that's a big cultural studies word, and it's a great way to start understanding, if you're interested in how you evaluate power at work and culture. Hegemony is a great term to start looking into. All right. The next interesting thing I think to note is the relation between the Brazilian-based merchants and landowners and governors, so those people who are hierarchically in charge, but who are Europeans on the one hand. They're on the ground, they're doing their best to maintain a good living, you could call that, right? Maintain a good system based on racist ideas of supremacy. And feeling themselves very European while dealing with the frontiers that they are navigating that the people back home don't understand. Meanwhile, you've got the Portuguese crown. And it's great for us to recognize Brazil is unique in that it was a Portuguese area. It's the only place North and South America where you find a bunch of people who still speak Portuguese. So they're interested in the crown. Those first two letters that they show, I want to highlight two interesting points in them. In the first letter, that's probably page 46, there's a wild disparity in this letter between seeing the slaves as slaves, right? No question. Some people are meant to be dominated. You can use violence. You can mark their bodies with burning irons. You can check them for teeth. You can breed their women. You can, right? Some people are meant to be objects. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, these Europeans are saying, you must save us from the threat of death. I think this is just remarkable, how people can maintain, and trust me, I'm sure I'm doing it right now, but how people can maintain two perspectives on reality at the same time. Those are people who I can enslave and treat with remarkable violence in order to keep them from rebelling, at the same time as I can say, save me because they're threatening to do what Haiti did and there will be bloodshed. There will be bloodshed. It's amazing. All right, second letter. The offense that concludes the letter, the last line of that letter says, they are trying to build a Mina coast here. Right? These are Europeans transplanted into the New World who are making a whole new world, right? Because back in Portugal, you're not owning slaves. You don't go to start your next olive plantation and enslave the people of your village to do it, right? The New World has a whole new set of grounds. I can have corn, I can have sugar cane, I can do all of these things, and I can enslave people while I'm doing it with a portico porch, right? So it's a new world. This is not the old world. The Europeans are making a world. They're making a new world. They're making it built on the structures of a racial supremacy and the slave economy. At the same time, they are decrying the audacity of these Africans who are trying to make a new Mina Coast over there. Right? It's just great. We get to make a new world here. They don't get to make a new world here, and it is the tone of that letter lets us know how preposterous it is to them that the black people would be trying to make a new world. We're going to get back to this idea of making worlds. All right, so those are those first two letters. At the top of page 47, we get a nice picture of what power is, how power is working in the spirit of the slave community. It starts on the bottom of 46. Both white authorities and the Afro-Brazilian communities found in Candomble a linkage of African ethnic identity, religious ceremony, and cultural resistance. So if you want to put your finger on the pulse of what is the power of the Candomble, there's three elements of that pulse. African ethnic identity, right? It means that your black skin, your black facial features, your black heritage is good. We have an ethnic identity, right? We are not dirt. Second, religious ceremony, right? As soon as you got ceremony happening, you have gathering, you have memory, you have the potential creation of a tapping into divine power. That's power. And then cultural resistance as well, so that they have the audacity to try to make this Mina Coast. There is a cultural resistance. They are not being our nice little black slaves, keeping our porches clean. Candomble is offering them cultural resistance to what we are, the world we are trying to make. So those are three areas of power. I think that's interesting. And on that same paragraph, Murphy describes Candomble as an assertive alternative. And so here we are back into this idea of alternative worlds. Candomble is making livable worlds and moral universes in the face of the unlivable and immoral world invented by their oppressors. The assertive alternative that Candomble is building in the community is, I'm checking my time here. The assertive alternative that Candomble is building in the community, it is making livable worlds and moral universes, right? There's something very moral in the code of belonging to your African root and in the roles of justice, of prosperity, right? The Orishas offer you the possibility of a good life, a rich life. And Candomble creates this livable world and this moral universe in the face of the unlivable and immoral world created by their oppressors. So, world making has to do with your place in the world and the ultimate significance of your place in the world. When you make an alternative world to an oppressive world, you are creating a world in which you actually have moral significance. You actually have meaning, heritage, value. That's a big deal. All right, so I hope you're having some fun with Murphy, and thanks for listening. Bye. Now, pause recording.